Well, soaring energy prices last year are affected more than just your wallet at the pump. They fueled oil companies' bottom lines as well, demonstrated in Fortune's annual ranking of the world's biggest companies by revenue, the Fortune Global 500. For fiscal year 2022, Walmart took the top spot again for the 10th year in a row, in fact, boasting $611 billion in sales last year. But major oil company Saudi Aramco is number 2 on the list, up from the 6th position in 2021. For more on this, we turn to Alyson Shontell, Fortune editor-in-chief and chief content officer. It's funny because already we had seen oil prices start to go down last year. But, the revenue at companies like Saudi Aramco still went up.
Massively. The revenue went up 51% last year, which was that 6-point position boost that you saw on our list. I mean, I can't stress enough, Saudi Aramco is a monster. It's a behemoth. It had $159 billion worth of profit. By comparison, Apple was just under $100 billion in profit. I mean, this is the most profitable company in the history of companies. So they are, they're able to pump gas much cheaper, pump oil much cheaper than you can here in the States. That is to their benefit. And you're seeing all of the oil companies boosted pretty significantly on our list this year.
And this year there was an increase in the number of U.S. companies on the list, correct?
Yes, the highest since 2010. So the U.S. had a good year. We performed pretty well globally. China and the Greater China area is also on the rise. Europe had a pretty weak year. The euro, I think, is to blame. We expect to see it rebound a bit next year as things sort out there. But yes, the U.S. had the most companies on, about 136.
And then there's the role of big tech, which we talk about all the time. People sort of raise eyebrows at how dependent the rally here has been on big tech, for example. Big tech also has a big presence on the list, as you might imagine.
It does. And, it's hugely revenue generating, profit generating. At the same time, I think while this year is steady, and Walmart was number 1 for the 10th year in a row, I think next year you might start to see the seeds of a lot of change. I mean, Saudi Aramco narrowly knocked Walmart off its perch. The revenue generated was within $20 billion. Definitely can close that gap if the trend continues. In big tech specifically, though, you're seeing AI hasn't really been felt in the numbers yet, and that trend will play out for the next 5-10 years. I mean, come 10 years' time, you could see a massive unseating of tech depending on the decisions that their CEOs make right now.
Speaking about the numbers, besides revenue, what are the other metrics that you all measure when compiling this list?
So revenue is the primary. I mean, you could argue that you could do the biggest companies in the world based on profits. That's not what we do. Otherwise, Amazon would not be number 4. It would be not even on the list. So we do it by revenue. We always have for 34 years. This is how we've done it. This is also how we do our Fortune 500 list, which is just the U.S. companies, and we did that 2 months ago. We do look at profits. We look at year-over-year growth. Those are the primary factors.
And how should people use the list, right? Like, it's fun to talk about, right? It's interesting to talk about the size, both for the Fortune 500 and the Global 500, sort of as a tool as well. How should people think about it?
I mean, I think people should look at the overall trends. I mean, so this is the most revenue generating year in 2022 that we've ever seen. 41 trillion in revenue generated by these companies. That's a third of the world GDP in those numbers, and that's concentrated in China, Japan, and the U.S.
Do the numbers ever go down? Do the revenue, have there been years when revenue has fallen?
Profits have, and profits did this past year. The revenue has just been ticking up.
Yeah.
And when you compare 2021 to 2022, were there any big surprises to you when you were kind of like heading into the 2022 year?
I mean, I think we knew that energy would be a big sector, but I mean, really, just to see the 40% increase really across the board, whether that's Shell or that's Exxon or that's Saudi Aramco, I mean, that was huge. I think to see the sheer size and scale of Saudi Aramco, I mean, the profit size there is just so big, and the ramifications for that are so big. I mean, Saudi Arabia has so much money to spend because a lot of those profits go into the public investment fund. And they say that they have over $3 trillion to spend by 2030. I mean, a lot of businesses are going to have to be making decisions of, do we want to do business with Saudi Arabia? That is a whole bunch of cash that we're looking at. So things like that, I think, really stand out.